Aloha everyone. We are here for our next installment in the 8 Days of Awe. And guess what? This is day number 8. So I have good news for you. We actually do have a 9th bonus day, which is going to be on Sunday, which is going to be about personal transformation through Mussar. Send me your questions. We're going to bring it all together, everything that we've talked about. We're going to talk about how our Yom Kippur was and how we can stick with the things that we started to learn. Today's topic is healing the political divide through Mussar. And we're going to talk about the soul traits of silence and awe. Today is a little bit different than some of the others, where I actually created a source sheet in Safaria. So if you look around on the American Mussar page, one of the top posts should have a link to the source sheet where you can see some of the materials that we are using as we go along. And if you're watching the replay, take a look at the comments because I'll have a link to that source sheet as well. But before we get to that, I want to give you a big Shaloha Friday. So you may remember from last Friday that Shalom and Aloha both mean hello, goodbye, and peace. And if we don't learn how to start saying hello to each other, we can say goodbye to peace in this country. This is not a good time in America. If you're watching this, you probably agree that this is the most toxic, the most divided time in America, maybe since the start of the Civil War. I don't know. I wasn't alive back then. My kids think I'm kind of old. I'm not that old, kids. Haven't been around that long. But it's certainly the worst that it's been in my lifetime. And the level of vitriol and the amplification by some national politicians and the sort of just nastiness that takes place on Facebook and on Twitter is just out of control. So today we're going to say, well, what does Mussar have to teach us about this? Well, one soul trait, I'm going to start with the soul trait really early. And the soul trait I want to start with is the soul trait of silence. So let's take a look at our spectrum of silence. So silence controls, and this is a figure from the book, silence controls when we talk and when we don't talk. And if we have too little silence, we get hurtful speech. And if we have too much silence, we get lack of helpful speech. You know, we are taught that in the book of Genesis, the divine created the world through speaking. God said, let there be light, and there was light, etc., etc. Now, whether you believe that literally or metaphorically, it really talks about the power and the impact that our words have on other people. They really, what we say really matters. And somehow, when it comes to social media, people think they can just start spouting off and saying everything. Like, for example, a couple weeks ago, I was doing, I sent out a Twitter message about something or other, and then someone replies, oh, well, that explains Donald Trump. Okay, now, what I was talking about had nothing to do with Donald Trump. And so to bring that in isn't going to do anything but piss people off. Or similarly, I was on the other side of the spectrum. I had someone who I was writing about Jewish identity, and somebody starts spouting off about Israel and all the bad Jews in Israel, and it was like this awful, awful writing. Or then you get, there's plenty of examples on the other side too, but this level of discourse is just not good. So let's see. Well, where can this lead us? What's the risk of it? Well, I'm going to go to the first source in this sheet. It's from the Talmud, and it goes as this. They said that Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of disciples. Now, Rabbi Akiva, you might remember, he shows up in the Passover Mussar. He was one of the greatest sages of all time. The Passover Haggadah, not the Passover Mussar. He was one of the greatest sages of all time. He was killed by the Romans. He had 12,000 pairs of disciples from Gabat to Antipharis. So over a big part of the country, he had a huge following. And they all died at the same time because they did not treat each other with respect. Now this is in contrast with like the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai, two rival houses. They couldn't agree on anything, but they still married each other, they still had conversation with each other, and they still respected each other. And unfortunately, where we are today, there is just absolutely no respect. In fact, there's just outright demonization of people on the other side. Now, I'm not saying you have to love the president. You don't have to like the president. You could be terrified and think he stands for everything that you're against. Or maybe you felt that way about our previous president, Barack Obama. Okay, and you couldn't stand what he was about. But when you start to talk about their supporters, well, if you voted for this person, then you must be an awful person, or you're supporting the next Hitler, or you're supporting this whoever. I just want you to just hold. I just want you to really think about, does that kind of speech promote healing? Like, are you doing this? Are you speaking? What is causing that? We're going to get to some sources that talk about that a little bit later. As we get into the second source, though, I want you to think about this question. Okay, now given this divisiveness and divide in the country, who's at fault? Is it all the other people? Is it all the people on the other side? If they'd only see reason, if they'd only understand my point of view, we would be fine. Or is the problem with us? Is it that I'm not listening well enough? That I am not being a good neighbor? Well, there's different realms we can answer this question. There's the political realm, okay, which is where does the power go? How do the votes get tabulated? Is the electoral college, still a system that serves us well? Those are all political questions. Okay, how's my senator going to vote? But when we look at the divide in the country, the spiritual question is another issue. And so this is where we're going to look at this reading from Rabbi Alan Liu. I've talked about him on a number of these videos this week. He wrote, amazing rabbi, he wrote this book, This is Real and You Are Completely Unprepared. And let's see how Rabbi Liu thinks who's responsible for this mess that we're in. Spiritually, the only question worth asking about any conflict, any reoccurring catastrophe is this: what is my responsibility for it? How am I complicit in it? How can I prevent it from happening again? Now, if that's making you feel uncomfortable, good. This is the high holy days. We are coming up upon Yom Kippur. This is the time we're supposed to be looking ourselves in the mirror. And maybe it really pissed you off to say, what do you mean, how am I responsible? The person I voted for didn't win. I'm not the one who's trying to keep all these refugees out and who's not being who's harder on NFL players than on the white supremacists. And maybe you're saying, hey, look, my guy won. We needed to get a little bit tougher in the world. We needed to support Israel some more. It's those other people that aren't respecting the president, that stand for all the things that I don't believe. You notice how much the word I is coming up? This whole trait of awe reminds us that we're a small part of something much bigger than ourselves. Now, whether you think about that as a relationship to the divine, which the divine is a part of everything, it's the whole world, it's the whole universe, or even in just this country, we are ourselves just a small part of it. And we weren't born with the right to have everybody agree with everything we say. I'm sorry, that's just the reality, okay? So So when Rabbi Lou says, okay, look in the mirror, how am I complicit? How am I perpetuating this situation? That's the only question that we can answer. You know, if you were hoping to come to this video and say, oh, we're all going to have a big kumbaya session, I'm so sorry. That's not where we are. And if you were hoping that I was going to somehow blame everybody but you for what's going on, I can't. And I am the first one to blame myself. I have been a contributor to this situation. I personally am responsible in many ways for the things that are going on. So until I can take accountability of that, and I'll share a little bit more about how I think I'm personally responsible, then we don't have anywhere to go. So Rabbi Lou continues in this next reading. Spiritually, we are called to responsibility to ask, what am I doing to make this reoccur again and again? Even if it is a conflict that was clearly thrust upon me from the outside, how am I plugging into it? What is there in me that needs to be engaged in this conflict? Why can't I just let it slough off my back like water off a duck's back, as I am able to do with so many other things? And so that's another key thing. Like, what is it about this conflict which is really getting you? I mean, don't get me wrong. Okay, I think we are in a time of absolute political crisis. I personally am not in favor of the direction that our government is trying to take the country. But let me share a story with you. I got really, really upset about this whole NFL protest thing. Like, why are people so energized by this? And I've been reaching out to somebody who has been somebody I went to college with, and he's very politically conservative, as is his wife. And they're really upset about the protesting and spitting on the country and spitting on the flag and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just trying to get them to acknowledge that there's an issue here. Hey, do you think it's a problem that way African Americans are treated? Well, they're not answering my question, and they're just going on about the various things that they're angry about. And I realized, and so I'm getting more upset about this, and I realized, like, hey, this is a humility issue. This is about me. Or somehow I'm starting to think that I can, like, make these people see the light. Okay, I think it's perfectly okay for me to engage with them, but when I start becoming emotionally invested in the outcome, when I start getting angry and frustrated at them because they're not listening to me, it's no longer about the country. It's no longer about what's right. It's about me. And so that's how I am contributing to this situation. Because when I'm letting this become about me and my opinion, oh my goodness, there are people who are getting deported. There are people who do not have food and water in Puerto Rico, and we're being slow to follow this up. There are Nazis marching who are being enabled. And I'm all upset and worried because nobody's going to listen to me over the frickin' taking a knee at an NFL game. I mean, come on, Greg. Let's get real here. I do think it's important to reach people in these small ways, but it can't be personal to me in that level. That's my opinion. I'd love to know what you think. Am I smoking crack here? Am I out to lunch, or is this making sense? Okay, let's go to our next issue, because I think this is really getting to the question of silence, where I'm leading us, and what's maybe the question I'm starting to ask myself is, was it right for me to speak in that time? Okay, so let's read the next one. Rabbi Ileah said in the name of Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, just as it is a mitzvah for a person to say that which will be heeded, so it is a mitzvah for a person not to say that which will not be heeded. Let me repeat that. So is it a mitzvah to say that which will not be heeded. Okay, so let's continue. One should not rebuke those who will be unreceptive to his message. Rabbi Abba says it is obligatory for him to refrain from speaking, for as it is stated, do not reprove a scorner, lest he hate you. Reprove a wise man, and he will love you. Okay, so here we have these folks that are scorning the people protesting and kneeling at NFL games. And here I am, gently, but still trying to rebuke them. They can see through it. I guess I wasn't that clever. Yeah, I was asking a question that was making them uncomfortable. I was trying to connect. But nonetheless, okay, fundamentally, I am sitting there trying to rebuke somebody who wasn't interested in my opinion. Okay, so what Mussar would be telling us is, it's not necessarily helpful. And when we're in a hole like we are, when you're in a deep hole, the first thing you need to do is you need to stop digging. When people are upset and angry the way that they are today, doing more things to get them upset, that will get them more upset and more angry, it isn't going to help. Because when we're upset, our evil inclination is engaged. It's our amygdala, it's our fears, it's our primitive brain. Nobody's going to listen to you. If they're upset, you think about a fight you've had with a relative. When everybody's really upset, nobody's listening to anybody. We need to take a little time to calm down, and then we can perhaps have a conversation. So anything we do that leads to more anger is not going to help bring healing. Now, I'm not saying don't resist. I'm not saying you can't be fundamentally against everything that might be going on in the government. Similarly, I'm not saying that you can't really be upset about left-wing anti-Semitism and speak out against that, because left-wing anti-Semitism is real. It's a real issue, and people on the right are making a real point. And I suspect that they do not feel heard. Anti-Semitism is a problem for all of us these days, and it cuts across left and right. And that's an area where we have a real opportunity to come together. But the question is, what can you do to try to be a better listener? Again, as Rabbi Lou said, how am I spiritually accountable for this situation? And so my opportunities to do better are, 1, to speak less, to exercise the soul trait of silence, and 2 is to have more honor or respect for other people. And again, I'm not talking about the leaders, okay? Let's leave them out of this. I'm talking about our neighbors. I'm talking about the people who are in our churches and the people who are in our synagogues. Because healing the political divide is not somehow to get Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell to get all lovey-dovey, and Paul Ryan and Nancy Pelosi are suddenly going to come together. That's not what I'm talking about. The healing that needs to take place is between me and my neighbor who's right-wing. The healing that needs to take place is between me and the people at my synagogue who are Republicans and are feeling alienated because there's so many Democrats who are upset about Trump there. These are people I've known for years, sometimes for decades. They're part of our community. If we can't get it right with those people, if we can't find a way to talk and listen to each other, we're in trouble. We are really in trouble. So here's some Mussar wisdom from Rabbi Menachem Mendel Levin, who wrote Heshbon HaNefesh. And what he taught us is, before you open your mouth, be silent and reflect. What benefit will my speech bring to me or others? Before you open your mouth, what benefit will my speech bring to me or others? And that is triply, it's 10 times true for a comment you're going to make on the internet. Is this really going to help? Is this really going to make things better? I had another, this great book, The Ways of the Tzaddikim, The Ways of the Righteous, also known as Orchot Tzaddikim. They talked about don't rebuke mockers. Okay, don't rebuke people who are just sitting there and mocking others. And the reason they say is, often the mocker will not accept chastisement. As is written, do not reprove the mocker, lest he hate you. And he approves the mocker, takes shame for himself. You know, I'm not saying we need to be doormats. But if you are on the internet just reflexively venting and, oh my God, I can't believe these people did this, and oh, you know, I need to respond to everything and tell them what awful people they are, it's just not going to bring about healing. Now, you have to ask yourself, is healing what we want to do? Maybe this is the time where we just need to marshal our forces and get ready for a conflict. And conflict is inevitable. And the election system isn't working anymore. Okay, well, I hope we're not there. But there's, I want to share with you just one more example. One of my favorite authors is Michael Chabon, his wife's Eilert Wildman. They're very, very left-wing Jews. They are very supportive and sympathetic to the Palestinians. And so they wrote this open letter to Jewish Trump supporters, which went on and on about, you know, they wrote it after Charlottesville. We warned you, we told you, now look what's happened. You know, if you're Jewish and supporting Trump, you're an anti-Semite, you're supporting Hitler. And part of me was reading this, it was like, yeah, that's, you know, I've tried to warn people too. But guess what? I said, but I know what I'm going to see in the comments. And they were livid. It was like, who the hell are you to tell me that? You supported the Iran deal and gave all this money to Iran, and they still get to do their nuclear weapons. And you were hanging out with Palestinians, and you should be ashamed of yourself. And F you, Michael Chabon. And you're no one to tell me anything. And you just ignore left-wing anti-Semitism, and you're a self-hating Jew. Now, you may or may not agree with those. I think that kind of talk and discourse is horrible. I really do. And I think that's true on both sides. I think this kind of shaming article that Chabon wrote was completely off base because it's not going to change a single mind. You know, imagine instead if we take an approach which my friend Bonnie suggested at a Mussar event right after the election, which is what if we said, hey, you know, we had an election, you elected a president thinking certain things were going to happen, and then, geez, now we have Charlottesville, and this is what he had to say. Do you agree with that? Okay. We're starting to deport all these immigrants who've been here for a while and haven't committed any crimes. Do you agree with that? Trying to roll back health care. 20 million people are going to lose their coverage. Is that what you were voting for? Is that what you agree with? You know, what do you think? There's a way of engaging in discourse with people which is non-shaming. Rather than saying, oh, you awful person, you voted for this guy, how bad for you. Or you stupid idiot, you supported Obama, and look what's happened, and, you know, when a nuke goes off over Israel, you can blame yourself. Okay, guess what? We're not getting anywhere with that. That's where we are today. We're just not getting anywhere. I've had some really good luck on this page, the American Mussar Facebook page, where sometimes people post some really awful things. And what I do is I write to them and say, this kind of language is not acceptable here. You're better than that. Please take down your post. 9 times out of 10, people take them down. People, when given an opportunity to act better, will act better. So that's what I got for you. You know, it's what I think is the next step we need to take. There's not going to be any magic bullet to our situation and our political division. But if we can just, A, moderate our own speech so we don't become the one that just starts bringing up political discourse into a situation where it isn't there. Don't be the, oh, we're talking about baseball. Don't bring up how much you hate Hillary Clinton. Don't bring up how much you hate Donald Trump. Don't bring it up. It has nothing to do with the topic. Okay. 2, don't get in arguments with people who aren't going to listen to you. And if they say, try to talk about the issues and not the people. And 3 is try to find the humanity in the other person. I'm not talking about the leaders. I'm talking about the person who who disagrees with you politically. And you may be baffled and sick to your stomach that they disagree with you. But try to find the humanity in that person. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom and a engaging and meaningful Yom Kippur. We have one more video which is going to be on Sunday. It's Mussar, a path to personal transformation. We're going to kind of wrap it all up and talk about how Mussar can help us move forward. Please send me any questions you have. I'd love to answer them in that talk. And send me some feedback on how have these videos been. Are they helpful to you? Should we do this more regularly? Should we start having Facebook Lives more regularly? I would love to hear what you think about that too. And now, thanks for watching.